Hello.
Hey, Dave. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. Now, are you on a mic setup, or are you talking like is it speakerphone? How have you got it set up?
I could do either or, whichever one sounds better.
My name is Steve Joel. I'm a 40K nerd from New Zealand. Oh, and a radio host. This is episode 10 of a series in which we meet the people who've changed the way we play, paint, read, collect or consume Warhammer 40,000. Whatever kind of 40K you do, I want you to meet the game changers. That sounds okay. Can I hear the other option?
Sure. Yeah, just give me 1 sec. I'll set that up for you.
Thanks, man. Sorry to be a pain. Want to make sure it's as good as it can be?
Yes, absolutely. All right, let's try it. How's that?
Oh, yeah, that's clean. This podcast is supported by the Frontline Gaming Network, and because they support us, I'd really love for you to support them. Why wait for heavy intercessors and chronomancers? Frontline Gaming has more stock right now of Killteam Pariah Nexus, and it's at a great price, so go get it. Big savings on the best stuff like Killteam Pariah Nexus right now at Frontline Gaming. The link is in the show notes for this episode. How are things?
Good.
Everything all right?
Everything's great. As great as it can be.
Yeah, well, yeah. Actually, how where are you guys at with all of that at the moment before we get started with the COVID and everything in your part of Canada? What's going on?
Well, it's we just recently came out of a lockdown, which is good. We're not quite locked down anymore, so we can have people here at the bunker and we can do things again.
In this episode, we get to know a legend of content creation, the OG, and, as we're about to find out, a real renaissance man of 40K. So, let's get started. His channel has 377,000 subscribers, which makes it easily the biggest and best-known battle report channel in the world. He's been producing 40K content since 2007. For those who want to keep track, that's 15 years. He's a movie producer, a children's author, an actor, and in 2017, his very niche company won Business of the Year at the local business awards. Dave Nordquist, known to us all as Miniwargaming Dave. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us, mate. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
My favourite thing that I know about you is that you had a landscaping business, and then the first thing you did on Miniwargaming was make tiny little landscapes for minis. It's super cool that you were able to bring that skill set straight across from the landscaping.
You did your research. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. That's how it all started, making small rocks and trees and hills.
I feel like it's a big switch being a landscaping guy, and then coming across to this. So.
Yes.
How did that happen?
Well, okay, so I would be remiss if I didn't mention my business partner, Matthew Glanfield, who I've grown up with. He's a childhood friend. And one day he calls me up and he's like, "Hey, Dave, do you want to play Lord of the Rings?" I'm like, "Yes, I want to play. That sounds fun. What's Lord of the Rings?" And it was the Games Workshop tabletop version of it, right? So we played on my coffee table using candlesticks as terrain pieces and box of Ferrero Rocher is another hill with a bed sheet to kind of simulate kind of like elevation of terrain and so forth. And that was a lot of fun, right? And so it went from that to, "Hey, Matt, we should do a business together." And he's like, "Well, you want to sell minis online?" I'm like, "Yep, that sounds better than landscaping. Let's do it."
Right.
And so it kind of just went from there. We started making videos, and he didn't want to be in videos at first in case it didn't work out. He didn't want to be associated with something that was kind of playing games, because he was doing a serious business, right? He was doing internet marketing, teaching people how to make money online. Where, I can be goofy on a YouTube channel. There's no problem, right? But so he saw so much. I was having so much fun with it. He was like, "Okay, I'll be in the videos. I'll be in the videos too." So good thing too, because he's a fantastic personality, and it wouldn't be the same without him. But yeah, we've grown since then. And that's how it started.
So when Miniwargaming started, you hadn't at that point played a single game of Warhammer 40,000?
Correct. That is actually correct, yeah. We started it, and I had not played 40K yet.
That's amazing. I mean, it's kind of, and as you say, you kind of started off with the idea of selling miniatures, and I think I'm right in saying the first videos you did, you were doing, making bases and using basing material that were in your online store. That was the idea, to push people to the shop to get the stuff.
Correct. That's right.
Yeah. And then Mr. Kirby changed the rules over at Games Workshop, and you were pretty much no longer able to operate a store. So that, at the time, that must have been like, well, holy crap, now what do we do?
Yes, absolutely. I remember that. So Matt made this video saying, hey, listen, we're going to close the store because Games Workshop changed the policies. So
Matthew here from Miniwargaming.com. And by now you may or may not have already heard about the new trade updates between Games Workshop and retailers in North America. There have been significant changes to their trade agreement with retailers such as us, Miniwargaming.
We couldn't sell outside of the country because we're in Canada, and we couldn't sell online. It had to be mail order. So basically two cuts, both legs cut from underneath us.
Wow.
And we couldn't do anything, right? And so we made a video saying, hey guys, listen, this is what's the state of affairs. We do have this online paid membership where you can see extra content that we've been working on. So if you want to support us, then that's the best way, because otherwise we won't be able to continue this. And so at that time, we were able to receive a massive boost in our support from the audience. And this was a number of years ago. We're closing in on 10 years ago that this happened. And so since then, it's been content, 100% content creation. And it's actually, in retrospect, a very good thing that Games Workshop changed their policies on us, because it forced us to grow in a different direction where we were completely independent and autonomous. We weren't relying on them anymore for our livelihood.
Isn't it funny how that works out sometimes? That at the time that felt like a blow. This is it. I'm going back to landscaping, but but actually the way it worked out, because of the community's support. I mean, that's where it ended up for you, right?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the community. Once again, the community, and that's why I love this community so much.
So Matt and you started the business together, which, having seen Matt now in a bunch of videos, it seems. Correct me if I'm wrong, but at a kind of a yin and yang relationship. He's very chill, he's very calm. You're like a ball of energy and ideas and chaos, and in the good way.
In the good way, yes.
Yeah, is that why it works? Do you think you two have grown up together? Has it always been that way?
Yeah. It's. I think yes. And the reason why I guess I'm reluctant or hesitant to say yes for certain that is it, because I don't know any different. We don't know any different, right? Like that's just how it is, and I think there's certainly a lot of merit to that. We care about different things. We have vastly different personalities. There's things that we look at that we tackle in a completely different way, and we challenge each other in ways where if we were very similar, we wouldn't, and we wouldn't grow in ways in which we have, because we're so different. So I think. After saying all that, kind of thinking out loud there, I think maybe that is just it. Maybe that's why we've been able to do this so long.
I'm fascinated by the idea of the two different personalities, and working in an environment where I work with a co-host. Do you have one of you? It seems like you would be like this big ideas guy, and being from his role, maybe he's more like the logistical person of, okay, well, that's a great idea, but man, how do we get that done? Is that how it works in the background or not?
I mean, that's certainly a very cut and dry way of explaining it.
Oversimplification.
To his credit, he has fantastic ideas, and he has a very big imagination when it comes to things. But I think those are certainly our strengths. When it comes to the big idea stuff, that's more so my strength. And when it comes to the logistics and looking at numbers, that's his strength. Like he would never admit this, but he is a genius. He learned a couple languages later on in his life, French and Tahitian. He plays the piano like a savant. He's no one knows this about him. He's without him, Miniwargaming wouldn't have the infrastructure that it has. And so I would absolutely. I think I would agree with that as well. That those are our strengths, and that's what we play to.
Right, and it must have been nice to have an internet marketing guy, kind of, right with you right there when you're essentially doing internet marketing.
Yes, yeah, essentially, right. It's not in the traditional sense where, hey, we're going to show you how to make money and grow audiences online.
Right.
It was, take a look at these awesome things that we're doing and the games that we're playing, and we are organically growing in a way that I believe it should be done, as opposed to look at I'm making money by showing you how to make money. It just kind of seems like this odd situation that only works in internet marketing scenario.
So the first reference I can find to an actual battle report, which I think this is what you're known for now, like you're the OG battle report team. The first reference I can find is in May 2008, and it's like a 2-minute trailer pointing people to the website, to the vault, for a full battle report.
Okay, that sounds right.
Yeah, and then in July of that year, it's Matt versus Scott, Nids versus Thousand Suns, and in that battle report, it's like a turn-by-turn summary upload of what's going on. So Correct. It feels like there was a lot of experimenting and messing around with what works and what might work and then what doesn't work, and you kind of you're really trying stuff out in 08. Is that fair?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of experimentation. Like as you said, right, there's multi-parts, and it was turn recaps. It wasn't showing every die roll. And I remember back then YouTube had a cap. They had it's like a 10-minute cap for videos that you can post and upload. So that's why we did it in parts. And back then it was like 1 part per week. So it would take like a month for you to see a full battle report. And then we made the big jump, right? The big jump of, hey, let's put all the parts together. Like once they didn't have that cap anymore on the time, like let's put it all together in one day. Wouldn't that be nuts? And so we started that, and obviously the response was better. It's like, yes, finally, we can see the whole thing in a single sitting. Thank you. Continue doing this. Never go back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It's so funny looking back now. When I'm doing the research, that wouldn't have occurred to me that, of course, YouTube had a cap because speeds and data and broadband and all that, there were limitations then that don't exist now. And it's funny with like talking to Winters and Lawrence, similar sorts of things for similar sorts of reasons. Things evolve because suddenly caps disappear or limitations disappear. And then someone like you says, well, man, let's see where we can take this. It must have been a really exciting, almost nerve-wracking at times, a period of the company's existence.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, okay. Yeah. Here's a good example. Like when you're playing the games, it's an incredibly complex game. And when you make an error, it's detrimental, not only to the game, but people see it and it's like, oh, okay, well, you're a professional channel. You shouldn't be making mistakes. How come you're making mistakes? Right. We're paying for you to see this and you're a professional. And so back then, when every single second and frame was edited, I remember editing out all that stuff. But since then, I've learned that that's actually all part of the flavor, is showing that human frailty, that human element of the mistake making that goes into the errors that give it more personality. And that was another hard leap to make, because it's like, okay, we're going to go from completely polished and seemingly perfect with 0 errors to people are going to see the raw, real decisions being made, and we can't go back, right? So that was a big decision to make.
I think it's amazing, and for other people who are listening who are maybe budding content creators, podcasters, whatever, this is something we learned in radio as well, and we went through this big phase in the 80s and 90s of everything's got to be perfect and polished. And then say you were listening to the radio and you could hear a door opening and closing in the background, and no one would explain why that happened because you're so focused on the radio show. But more and more now, it's about realism, about being real. If you stuff it up and you let people know, hey, that was my bad, or you address it, or you just move on. It's just about being real, and the more real you are, the better the response you'll get. Is that what you guys found?
Yes, I would agree with that. There's definitely there's a result. There's a direct consequence to the transparency.
Yeah,
and I think that in turn, it just makes you more relatable.
Yes.
Because a lot of the comments that we receive, they err on the, hey, it feels like I'm in the room with you playing the game. I feel like a fly on the wall watching your guys' game. And that's one of the best compliments that we can receive, is that people who are watching, who may not be able to make it to a gaming club or play often with their buddies, they're able to still get that experience or a degree of that experience by watching us play.
Other folks I've spoken to have always referenced you guys. So Lawrence said, well, when we started, Miniwargaming was around, but no one else. And then Winters said, well, when I started, Miniwargaming was around. So you've inspired other people. What I'm interested in is, who inspired you? Who were you looking at or looking to when you first kicked off this whole thing?
So back then, there was a handful of YouTubers, because this is back when YouTube was basically just born. It was a new thing. To have 500 subscribers was a huge deal back then. And so I remember the biggest channel at the time was Blue Table Painting, and they had 1,800 subscribers. So let's put things into relative terms there for a moment, where that's hardly anything right nowadays.
Yeah.
But back then, that was huge. That was like, hey, that's a small hick town watching videos. That's so many views. What? That video got 300 views? That's so many. It's so many people. And so we wanted to reach that. We wanted to be like, hey, one day, we'll have 1,800 subscribers.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it was nuts. So we worked towards that, and we saw his battle reports. So as much as we're one of the older ones that have been making battle reports, we certainly weren't the first, because Sean from Blue Table, he was making bat reps before us. In fact, the term bat rep, short form battle report, I mean, we got that from him, and we started making battle reports, and we're like, hey, it's a good idea. People want to see the game played, so let's do that too, in addition to the terrain tutorials that we were making.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is it. So you had a whole lot going on. I saw this great kind of behind-the-scenes video. You introduced your brother and then kind of showed us around this inside the city hall, which I think was your old base, inside the city hall,
Yes.
and you showed us people. It looked like some people were playing a fantasy game and other people were doing, like, making terrain, and then other stuff was going on. There's just so much kind of happening, you know, in there, and you're videoing some of it, and then you're overseeing all. Actually, I think at the time, in this video, you're using some brand new software to build an army list, which tells you how long ago it was. So, time-wise, you're in the old city hall producing videos. Seems like there are plenty of people. How long did it take then for you to bring on guys like Luca and Steve and the others, and really then hone in on what we see now as Miniwargaming?
So that was a big decision. Again, that was another big jump, right? Because then it went from taking all of the attention off of myself and Matt onto another person as well, and dividing that attention and not fully understanding the repercussions of that, and whether it be good or bad. That was certainly a leap that we had to take. And Dan, Codex Dan is what he's known as, the orc player, the man with the longest wah I have ever heard in my life. It's the big beard. He was the one that we hired first for content creation as a content producer who wasn't one of us. And so it started with one, and then it grew into more, because we saw that and we're like, we're able to actually make more content if we have more content producers. What happens if we have more? And so then we started to hire more and more. And so over the years, there's been personalities that have come and gone at different stages of life, and different goals in life, and different various reasons why people have left. But right now, the team that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total, 5 content producers, myself and Matt included, making battle reports and showing off the game. Yeah,
and it seems like a good bunch. I want to ask, when you talk about in the early days, when you talk about hiring someone, I'm assuming that isn't bringing someone in full time and giving them a big movie star wage. do they come in and, like you say, we'll give you a few bucks, you make a video, and then they have other work that they're doing as well?
Yeah, like I remember with Dan, it started part-time, right? And we paid him above minimum wage because we really wanted to do that, just to kind of feel good about ourselves as business owners. Hey, let's provide a wage that's higher than minimum. So I think it might have been like $1 more than minimum. So it wasn't a whole lot. It's a very, very modest wage. But the fact that we were able to provide employment for this amazing thing that we were doing was just mind-blowing. It was just like, wow, we can play the game, not only play the game, but actually employ people to play the game. How crazy is that?
Yeah, and then that's your whole thing right at the start. We play and call it work, and it's great. I feel like this is the dream. If you play the game, being able to earn a living from it is the big pipe dream.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So now there are so many people in the business now, the battle report business. How much has it all changed for you when you look out over that landscape? How much has it changed in 15 years?
Oh man, so first off, it is incredibly exciting to see so many, and not just so many, but to see so many high quality channels that exist out there. Because back then, I mean, if we're the biggest one that exists, then we just throw up a camera and collect footage and because we're the only one, it doesn't really, like, quality doesn't matter as much. I say that because what other option do you have? Like,
Right.
we're the only ones making videos, right? But what the other channels have done, and I say this with complete transparency and honesty, is they have pushed us to excel, to be better, and better in a good way, because we're different from each other. Like, as much as we're making battle reports and we're all covering games that are either the same or similar, and at the end of the day, it's a battle report, we are different in our personalities, in our styles, and in the way in which the game is covered and the aspects that are focused on. And so, tabletop tactics, I'll give Lawrence a shout out for just a moment here. The Spider. So when we looked at his videos, this was a number of years ago, when he was just a couple of years after he started, and we saw that he was doing cinematic intros, and we're like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
How could we do something like that? Do we need to do something like that? And so we started experimenting, right? And completely inspired by the stuff that he was doing on his channel at the time. And then Winter's SEO, right? So Winter's, fantastic dude, by the way. Just love that guy. Looking at his stuff and looking at the different tables that he's making. And again, he's very much, it feels like you're in the room fighting alongside with him.
Yeah.
And he's got that relatable attitude where it's, yeah, have a drink, play a game, let's have some fun, let's do a fun narrative thing. And then looking at the tables, it's like, okay, he's got some unique tables with the terrain that he's using, and putting like this loose stone around buildings, and so it's like that inspired us with our terrain a bit. And then with Play on Tabletop, looking at their production value and seeing a battle report and looking at it and like, man, that could be on TV, looking at the quality, right? And so I would say, out of the channels, like, for us, that disrupted us so much, looking at how they were making battle reports, because they started just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And they exploded on the scene with these amazing battle reports. And so much so where everything that had been done thus far was done to a certain level, quantity, quality level, right? And they come on the scene and they make this thing that looks like it can go on Netflix or it can go on TV. And we're like, oh, wow, this is completely disrupting everything that we've ever known. We need to rethink this whole thing. And I've spoken to their team. I've spoken to TAC, and we've become friends over the past year. And we've compared notes back and forth as well. And I told him this, so he's aware of this. And so what Miniwargaming did, is we went back to the drawing board and said, okay, how can we make a battle report that is the max amount of quality that we can produce given our production resources? And so we tried the interview style, kind of reality TV style playback, where we would show the game. We try to do cinematics. We try to do that narrative, and we try to do the gameplay as well, making it super, super tight, putting a lot of hours into production afterwards in the editing. And then when we posted them, we posted a number of battle reports like that, a few dozen. And the feedback was very interesting, not what we were expecting. It was the majority. Like, there was a lot of stuff like, oh, cool new style, you guys are trying something new. Then there was a lot of, oh man, we can't hear you guys, it's jarring, it's all over the place. And then there was a lot of, you know what, as much as this is higher production value, we don't see your personalities. Your personalities are completely lost in this new style. I'd rather see the old style with your personalities, because that's why I watch your channel. So what it did is it showed us the things that people like most about us, and it showed us the areas in which we can improve that made sense for us to improve. Not just to copy another channel that is doing something amazingly well, but to look inward and to be introspective and to see ways in which we can improve. And we have since done that. We've improved our own style, and so our style is much better than it used to be a year ago or a few years ago, because of these other channels.
Which is awesome. Amazing, really, that you have that ability to look out and go and kind of pick things and be inspired and look to improving, rather than the attitude that some people have, which is, we are the best, you guys do what you want to do, and we'll just keep on, towing our own line.
Yeah.
it's interesting you mentioned personalities as well, because again, in other really successful channels that I've spoken to, there's a general agreement that a big part of that is how well the people gel together and how well the personalities come across on camera. And you have guys with big personalities, and you've got Matt, who's just this kind of quietly spoken, knowledgeable dude who's you learn a lot from as you watch, and everyone kind of gels really, really well. I think that's got to be a big part of why it works, don't you think?
Absolutely, yeah. You kind of have your own personality that you cater to, that you like, that you relate to.
Yeah,
you like watching.
And not everybody's going to like everybody, but as long as you,
no,
yeah, okay.
But you have your variety, though, which is why the multiple personalities, I think, it works. And on your note about what you were saying about some channels saying that, watch ours because we're the best, and different channels saying that, that's very interesting, because we've talked about that amongst ourselves, amongst the community, and what constitutes the best. What constitutes the best battle report channel? And that is so subjective.
Yeah.
It's very relative to what you prefer, right? Like, all right, is the highest number of subscribers, does that determine the best? Well, I mean, there's other channels that get more views than us, so that's obviously not right, because we'd rather more views than subscribers, because at the end of the day, that doesn't matter. And then there's also a number of comments and videos, right? There's also the accuracy in the games, and there's the personalities, which you can't quantify. You can't. How do you compare that, right? Like I like Lawrence better than Steve, or I like Winters better than whoever, right? Like it's really hard to. It's really what it comes down to is preference. It's just like, I like watching this because I think it's fun and I feel good watching it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be different for everybody.
And variety is important in terms of, look, if you go into any city in the world, the car dealerships are all in the same area, and the cafes and the bars are all down one long strip or in the same area, because what you want to do is invite people who are interested in battle reports into a space and go, well, here's a bunch. And then you have you guys and whoever else offering battle reports to people. And the more quality the ones there are, the better it is for all of you guys, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I absolutely agree to that, because it'll cater to a larger audience. It'll bring in people who aren't players of the game necessarily.
Right.
Bring new players in.
And you and Play On is a great example. The people who watch their reports and like that style, they see you on the channel, as we did in real time. This is, I want to say, a week ago or so. And they go, oh, well, let's check that guy out. And obviously that's why you guys do it, as well as having fun. Let's talk about your other interests. In 2016, you made a movie called The Ranger's Bloodstone, which I watched the trailer for, but I haven't seen the movie. And the trailer looks amazing, as someone who comes from the country that made Lord of the Rings.
Awesome.
It's so cool. And I love you've got this drone shot over the hills and the valleys. And so you wrote and directed and starred in this and produced it.
I did.
Correct?
I did.
Okay.
Yes.
So we call it a passion project.
Definitely a passion project. 4 years. It's a 4-year project.
Wow.
And it's okay. So since I was a kid, I've had this dream of being an actor, being in movies. I see the credits roll up at the end of a movie, and I'd ask my dad, "Hey, Dad, how come my name's never in there?" And he's like, "Well, son, you need to be a part of the movie for that to happen." And so it's always been a dream of mine. I've always watched movies, and if I, as a little side note, if I didn't have a YouTube channel about wargaming, I would 100% have a YouTube channel about movies, right, and probably do video movie essays about that, because I just love it so much. But yeah, so I've always wanted to do that. About 5 years ago, I was at Gen Con. I met this director. He was showcasing his film there. He was promoting it. And I talked to him about it. I was there for like wargaming purposes, right? And he was the first person I talked to. His name is Ron Newcomb. And I said, "Hey, this is cool. I didn't know movies were here. What are you doing here?" And he told me about it, and talking for a good hour. And he said that, yeah, this is what I do. I'm a filmmaker. And just like kind of as a little thing, I said, one day it'd be really cool to be in a movie. And this is where he turns to me and he goes, "You know what, Dave? I want you in my next movie."
Wow.
And I said, "I'm not sure what that means, but I'm not going to say no to that. That's super cool." And so he told me about it. It's a fantasy film called The Rangers. And I did an audition for it afterwards, and he accepted me, and I flew to Virginia, and I was in this movie. I spent a year growing my hair long and learned this accent that I stumbled my way through, but luckily I was teamed up with a professor of acting who really helped me with that. And I had so much fun on set. Oh man, it was like being transported to another world. At the end of filming, I asked Ron, I said, hey, can I keep my costume in case I want to film on, make a video on my YouTube channel? And he thought about it. He's like, you know what? Yeah, that's a good idea. It could only promote the movie. And so I took my costume home, and it was kind of tough getting it over the border because it's like, all right, so what's the value of the goods? I'm like, I don't have any idea. There was a gift. He's like, it doesn't matter. It's a gift. What's the worth?
Yeah.
So I guess it was worth a couple $1,000s, which I had no idea. But he let me have it because he believed in me, right? And so I thought, okay, it's time to make a movie. It's time to make a video or something. But I don't want to just make a YouTube video. I want to make an actual short film that could fit in the canon of this world that he's already created. And so I asked Ron, I said, hey, I want to make a short film. First off, is that okay? And if so, what are the parameters? And again, he thinks about it and he goes, you know what? Yes. Yeah, that's totally cool. I love the idea. But there's a couple things. One, your character can't die in case it affects something I want to do in the future. And two, it has to take place before my movie. And basically what I interpreted that to mean was I was immortal and I could do anything I want.
That is the only way to interpret what he said, I think. That's fair.
That's the only way, right?
Oh,
so, absolutely. So I go ahead and make a short film. It was a 20-minute short film. And I made it within the parameters of everything that I was able to control, which was my time and, other people's time. So I got a couple of Miniwargaming employees to be in it. At the time, it was Quirk and Steve. And Quirk played this orc villain. Steve played this massive brute villain. And then my daughter was in it. So I made this simple little story of these orcs raiding and pillaging villages. They kidnapped my daughter, and I got to go save her. Very much a fantasy version of Taken.
Right. Oh, wow. Great.
Yeah, and that's where I got the story from. And it was submitted to film festivals, and wouldn't you know it, it actually wins one. Had no clue that it could win a film festival because I'd never made a film before. I had never written any script before. My relative experience was YouTube videos, but that's vastly different. It was just kind of goofing around making YouTube videos, right? And it attracted the attention of a couple producers, which, again, I had no clue that filmmakers, that's what they do. They make a short film, they submit it to film festivals in the hopes that a producer gets interested and gives them production budget money. I did that inadvertently, not even expecting to do it.
Right.
And that's why the feature film came up. And so the feature film was it was a continuation of the short film. It finished the story. And it ended up having 18 actors, 62 extras. We built sets for it. Lots of costuming. Each one was uniquely costumed. There was a Kickstarter for it. And so it was this big, big project that just kind of exploded, and the excitement was contagious, and everyone was very happy to be a part of it and share in that experience, everyone together. It was really out of this world.
And it was it was well received. It must have been really cool to get it made and then have that premiere in Welland. Was that for the short film or for the feature film?
For both, actually.
Oh, you did both. Okay, great.
Yeah, that was awesome too. And I remember that first experience of seeing myself on the silver screen in Virginia for the first time and being super self-conscious, like, oh man, everyone's looking at me right now. But at the same time, this feels amazing. I'm so conflicted in my brain. But it was very iridescent, right? So I wanted that same experience for everyone who was involved in the movie because I just knew how incredible it felt.
And now, just to really prove the Renaissance Man label that I have just given you, you wrote a kid's book as well called Trolls.
Yes.
I think there's only one way to say it, right? You can't quietly say Trolls.
No, it's definitely a yell. It's definitely like a wah version of it.
Yeah.
So for bedtime, I didn't read bedtime stories to my kids. I instead did a role-playing game with them that I made up on the spot. We did this imaginative role-playing game for 5 to 10 minutes each bedtime, made up our own characters. And so that's where that spawned from. And so Trolls, in the world of Trolls, I figured, you know what, it would actually be fun for me to read them a bedtime story, but based off of the adventures that we've been on and using them as characters in the book.
Yeah.
How cool will that be? So I was going to do that. I was going to take pictures and assemble, compile them into a book and go to Walmart or somewhere like that to just kind of print off one copy. And I thought, you know what, if I'm going to go through all this work, maybe what I could do is actually get it illustrated and write it properly, and maybe the wargaming community would want to participate in this as well, because I can add some wargaming elements into it. And so I did. And so it was the Wargaming Kids book. I mean, there's Deafy is in the book. You're rolling dice, and there's at the very last page, we're all around this table wargaming together. And so around a table, putting together minis and rolling dice and having snacks. And after we've gone through our adventure, and that was a successful Indiegogo campaign that I managed to do.
And while we're on the kids, I watched some Kid Hammer. First of all, your kids are the cutest. I mean, I want to trade. My kids are cool and everything, but your kids are just so cute.
Well, I mean, I don't disagree. You're very kind with your words, but I am biased, so I do agree.
Right. Kid Hammer's a cool idea. What's happening with Kid Hammer? Well, actually, we should explain what Kid Hammer is in case people haven't seen it. It's you and your one or two of your children at a time playing a game of Warhammer with actual armies, smaller armies, but still, and kind of introducing kids to the game, which is such a cool concept. And they are so cute that it carries off so well.
Well, again, thank you for that. It was certainly a fun experience for me. For them, it's different because it's filming, right? If we were straight up playing the game, I think that would be different. But because of the filming process and having to wait for certain things, and little kids, especially small kids, like the patience isn't always a thing that they're endowed with, right? So it was fun while it lasted. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do it more in the future. The idea, I think there's merit behind the idea, and to be absolutely frank, there was a lot of me telling them what to say on camera, right? Because if you were to watch it not knowing any different, it would look as though they know how to play the game, which is very much very far from the truth. They're basically repeating what I'm telling them to say, but they're still having fun rolling dice and watching things explode, right? They're having fun doing that. But for them to make their own decisions tactically and know what they're doing is, I mean, that takes years. Sure. And that's why kids usually, when they're like, what are they, 12 or more when they get into the game, truly? Because I was playing with my 5-year-old, and other than this cool model that has this thing that has big guns on it, it's having fun with daddy. That's kind of his experience, and I think that's how he'll remember it.
Yeah, and that's great. But at some point, you've got to make the decision. Hold on, maybe I'm better putting all of this time and effort into the channel, into Miniwargaming, and So then in 2017. Miniwargaming was named Business of the Year at the Welland Pelham Chamber of Commerce Ruby Awards. As a guy who started up what we have to say is quite a niche business, that's pretty cool. There must be people in Welland who have no idea what 40K is, or are you kind of famous in town now and people know what it is?
Well, I don't know if I'd ever go as far as to say that I'm famous anytime, anywhere. I certainly, there's a lot of people who don't know who we are. Especially in Welland, even in spite of winning the award for 2017. And so, I mean, there certainly was a lot of that. It's like, wow, who are you guys? Where did you come from? What is your business? Yeah. I had no idea you can make money that way. Yeah. There was a lot of that, right? But I think really the thing that caught the local public eye was the fact that we were building the bunker at the time, and that there was this big, grand idea that was formalizing and physicalizing that excited a lot of people.
Funnily enough, on my list, that's the next thing to get to is the bunker. Just because, watching the channel, I used to see these people come and challenge, you'd see Luca or Steve or whoever playing against someone from Chicago, and they'd introduce themselves and then they'd play. And as a person that lives on the other side of the world, I thought, one day I will do this, make this journey to wherever they are in Canada. And then I read that you had, that lots of people want to do this. And so you had set up, or you had the idea of setting up the bunker, which is what? Accommodation, and people go and stay and play.
That's essentially it. In its simplest form. Absolutely. That's what it is. So, I mean, for years, that's another 5-year idea.
Okay.
Because I remember 5 years ago, I had this idea because we had guests come all the time and we're fighting them, right? And, we had built these studios. I remember making the studios. It was a lot of fun. We had 4 themed studios.
Yeah.
And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if when the guests come, they don't stay in a hotel, they stay in a bed and breakfast. And what if that bed and breakfast was themed like the studios? How immersive would that be? And heck, what if that bed and breakfast was attached to us somehow, and we owned it?
Yeah.
And so I talked to every guest that came in. It's like, hey, what do you think of this idea? And I'd run it past them, right? And they're like, well, that's a no-brainer, Dave. Of course we'd stay here.
Yeah.
Of course we'd want to stay here and not at a hotel. Like, we can game all into the wee hours of the morning. And so everyone seemed to like the idea, right? And I just happened to tell the right person, which was Hunter White, who ended up becoming the investor for the bunker. And I told him the idea, and I remember what he said to me. He's like, Dave, that's awesome. When are we going to do this? And I'm like, when are we going to do this? That's an amazing response. I'm not sure what that means yet, Hunter, but I like where we're going with this. When are we going to do this? Because I thought it was just like, 10 years down the road, and maybe we'll have that. And so we found this property, and okay, here's a good example of how Matt is so different than me. Because I was having this wild idea, and I told Matt, and I said, okay, first off, are you for the idea, against the idea? And if you're for it, what do you care about? He's like, yeah, well, it seems like to be a good idea. There's no reason not to. There's not huge risk. And the thing I care about is, can I control the temperature in the room, hot or cold? That's all I care about. And so I said, so the aesthetics, so how I want the rooms to look, every nut and bolt. You're saying that I can just go nuts and you're cool with that? He's like, yep, that's totally fine by me. Okay,
as long as there's temperature control, he's all good. That's so good.
And so there it is right there, right? And he said, yeah, that stuff, like aesthetics, making things like that's your thing, Dave. And so, yeah, so I just went nuts with it. And the building that we have, not only does it have the rooms upstairs for people to stay that are themed like the studios that we have 6 studios that are all themed uniquely based off of the Warhammer games. And then we also have a tournament hall that, without COVID restrictions, can fit 60 people.
Wow.
And then there's also a storefront that we lease to a friend of ours. And, there's a cafeteria space, lots of storage for things. So just it became much more than we were expecting. There's even space below the store on the lower level that we are turning into escape rooms, which will still continue. It's been halted because of COVID, but I'm optimistic, and I think that it'll be fine, and that we'll be able to proceed with that. But it's really a kind of like this wonderland of fun things to do if you're into Warhammer and you can appreciate the stuff that's going on around you.
I feel like this is like an inspiration story for other folks in other parts of the world. And weirdly, I caught up with Lawrence from Tabletop Tactics. I want to say about a year and a half ago. I was in London and we sat down and had a beer, and I was talking to him about your idea then and about how cool that was and what if he could do something like that. And he's like, man, wouldn't that be amazing? So you know what? Everybody inspires everybody. So to give us an idea behind the scenes, how many people are coming through pre-COVID? How many people are coming through Welland, like on a weekly basis, going, I want to play against one of your guys?
Weekly, multiple people a week. There's,
right.
So I mean, every day.
Yeah.
Every day there were guests. Sometimes the guests would stay for a week and take turns battling each one of us.
Okay,
Sometimes
really?
Be multiple guests, and fighting many of us at a time. And
I feel like if you're going to make the journey, if it's a long one, you want to stay for a few days and then maybe have a game each day against different people. That's a great idea. Wow, that's a goal. That's a life goal for me now. So then COVID hits. That had to hurt you guys, because I feel like the bunker was only just born and maybe only just finding its legs, and then this stinking pandemic has come in. How did that play with you?
So I mean, yeah, we had to shut down obviously there was no guests at all coming in. Right. That was a complete halt on that. And then people coming to the bunker to stay to the bunker. I mean, a lot of people weren't traveling anywhere at the time. So that was a complete halt on all of that stuff. We have since had a handful of guests, less than 20 since last year, since the pandemic hit. So, I mean, this is the long game. I think the bunker and the rooms and the experiences that people can have here, gaming here, that's certainly the long game, because for the past year we haven't been able to focus on it because of the pandemic. But it's interesting because in one area that suffers, another area increases, because we have noticed that since the pandemic, our views on our videos have increased because there are more people at home that have more time to watch videos.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how there's this ebb and flow of basically the world that we have no control over and that we can't predict. And so we can just hope for the best. That's the best we can do.
I feel like that's a nice spot to end it, except for maybe to ask, since you're just a constantly moving ball of ideas, I imagine awake at night time thinking of new things. What's next on the agenda for you?
Making a miniature war game. That's next.
Okay.
That's the next big one, in which I'm currently working on, and I've teased a couple posts about it. And that's probably out of all the projects I've ever worked on, that is the largest, most lofty, most detail-driven, most long-term game-changing idea project, because the success of that will determine more of that. And that is the most exciting because it's the most relevant to what I do.
Right.
The movie is not relevant. I made it part of Miniwargaming because same with the kids' book. I made it part of it. Even the bunker is like, yes, it's in the background, it's in the periphery, but making a miniature war game, that is the most relevant thing that I could do, that I could work on to make part of the channel and add to the excitement that is Miniwargaming.
Well, I'm really excited to see how it all unfolds. I can't wait to hear more about it. Dave, thanks so much for your time, mate. Really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun getting to know you.
A pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
A very big thank you to Dave from Miniwargaming. If you enjoyed this episode, listen to every conversation with all of my amazing guests at 40kgamechangers.com or wherever you get your podcasts. You can find Miniwargaming on YouTube or at miniwargaming.com. Next week, Chapter Master Valrak on being a 40k fanboy and that thing with Winters. Is that really a feud? Until then, I'm Steve Joel, and this has been 40k Game Changers.